When my grandson Bradley told me I'd be living in the converted storage shed because you don't need much space at your age, he had no idea he was speaking to the woman whose private banking empire had quietly managed over $2.8 billion in family trust assets across 3 generations. Financial institution advisory board positions had determined lending policies for 17 major banks throughout New England, all because the ambitious 34-year-old real estate developer who assumed his elderly grandmother was just another fixed-income senior living on Social Security and family charity never bothered to ask why the property's mortgage had been mysteriously paid off in full 2 years earlier, why their family's credit applications were always approved within hours instead of weeks, or why financial documents from Chase Private Client Services and Bank of America Private Bank were regularly delivered by executive courier to a woman he believed couldn't even understand online banking. Never realizing that the simple retired widow they had relegated to sleeping in the converted garden shed was actually Ruth Elizabeth Hartwell-Morrison, former senior vice president of wealth management at Goldman Sachs Private Banking Division, whose $47 million personal investment portfolio and 42 years of institutional banking expertise had been quietly ensuring that ungrateful family members enjoyed luxury Connecticut living while treating the elderly woman whose financial authority created their opportunities like an unwanted burden, taking up valuable square footage in the prestigious $4.2 million Greenwich estate. Before we dive into this incredible story of family greed meeting banking authority and the financial empire my ungrateful relatives never knew existed, make sure to hit that like button. Drop a comment telling me about your worst experience with family members who treated you like you were worthless while secretly depending on your support, and subscribe so you never miss stories like this one about what happens when entitled relatives assume elderly family members are helpless dependents, only to discover just how catastrophically wrong they can be when family dismissal meets the kind of institutional banking power that could transform their comfortable developer lifestyle into a harsh lesson about gratitude and the true meaning of respecting your elders. My name is Ruth Elizabeth Hartwell-Morrison. I'm 74 years old, and this story begins on October 8, 2024, when I returned from my quarterly board meeting at the Connecticut Bankers Association in Hartford to discover that my grandson Bradley had made what he considered a practical housing decision that would reveal his true character and teach him the most expensive lesson about dismissing elderly relatives whose quiet financial expertise had been ensuring that promising young families maintained luxury estate ownership, seamless business funding, and the kind of anonymous banking backing that determined whether ambitious real estate developers could afford prestigious Greenwich addresses or spend their evenings calculating loan payments that could destroy their carefully constructed development empire and affluent lifestyle. To understand how my grandson Bradley James Morrison, a 34-year-old commercial real estate developer running Morrison Development Group with 12 active projects worth $89 million, while living in a property whose mortgage, tax, and insurance I had been coordinating through my private banking network for 6 years, ended up watching his comfortable developer lifestyle disappear through legitimate financial authority protocols within 48 hours of moving his elderly grandmother into a converted storage shed. You need to know who I was before my carefully maintained image as a simple retired widow, living on a modest pension, concealed the banking expertise and institutional financial authority that had elevated me from junior trust officer in 1978 to senior vice president of Goldman Sachs Private Banking Division, a position that required overseeing $12.7 billion in annual family wealth coordination and creating the institutional banking networks that determined financial accessibility for over 3,400 high-net-worth families throughout the northeastern United States, European banking partnerships, Caribbean offshore financial jurisdictions. For 42 extraordinary years I was Ruth Morrison, dedicated institutional banking professional at one of Wall Street's most prestigious private wealth management firms, starting as an entry-level trust administrator when family banking was still managed through paper ledgers and manila file folders, advancing through every level of private banking responsibility until my strategic retirement in 2020, as Senior Vice President with authorization over family wealth coordination, multi-generational estate planning, and institutional lending systems that most people never understand or appreciate. My career had encompassed every aspect of private banking, from basic trust administration to complex multi-generational family wealth planning that determined whether promising families maintained their estate properties across decades, whether young professionals received appropriate lending support for business venture, and whether the next generation of successful families achieved the financial independence and institutional banking relationships that distinguished lasting prosperity from temporary real estate speculation and development management failure. The scope of my banking responsibilities had grown to encompass managing private wealth portfolios for 2147 families across 12 states, coordinating with federal banking authorities who required accurate documentation for regulatory compliance and anti-money laundering protocol, implementing lending protocols that balanced family needs with institutional accountability requirements, designing investment assistance systems that synchronized between private banks, federal agencies, and international wealth management firms, and troubleshooting ownership complications that could affect everything from individual family success to multi-generational wealth development that influenced regional banking markets and family financial excellence throughout the Northeast private banking community. During my 4 decades of distinguished private banking service, I had personally overseen wealth coordination for over $47.3 billion in family banking projects, supervised coordination between 34 different financial institutions across 6 countries, collaborated with federal banking officials who required accurate regional data for compliance analysis and regulatory oversight, and managed lending support protocols during market volatility that required immediate coordination between banking institutions, regulatory agencies, and private wealth firms to ensure family stability while maintaining institutional integrity and privacy protections that balanced asset access with lending optimization and regulatory compliance requirements throughout the most challenging economic periods in modern financial history. The transformation that I had witnessed and managed during my career was extraordinary, from manual banking documentation systems stored in traditional filing cabinets to sophisticated encrypted digital platforms that could instantly verify lending eligibility, credit status, asset verification, and financial availability across institutional networks that connected individual family wealth support to international private banking systems operating in London, Zurich, Singapore, and the Cayman Islands. I had been personally responsible for training over 347 banking professionals in private wealth administration protocols, regulatory compliance procedures, and lending management techniques that required both advanced banking expertise and deep understanding of family dynamics, federal financial regulations, and fiduciary privacy protections that distinguished legitimate wealth management from speculative investment schemes. My position as Senior Vice President meant that I possessed what was essentially master-level access to the Northeast Regional Private Banking Network, the ability to classify lending eligibility, coordinate multi-institution asset distribution, implement emergency wealth support protocols, evaluate beneficiary conduct that could instantly transform someone's financial status from guaranteed lending access to comprehensive banking review, requiring extensive character evaluation and regulatory compliance verification to complete through proper institutional channels and documentation processes that could take months or years to resolve satisfactorily. But perhaps the most significant aspect of my banking career was my role in developing and implementing the automated lending administration protocols that determined how institutional funding flowed between private portfolio commercial lending systems, regulatory verification networks, and family support coordination throughout the greater New York metropolitan area and New England region. I had personally written lending specifications that guided wealth management for dozens of Connecticut's most successful families, established coordination procedures between bankers and regulatory authorities, and created evaluation protocols that ensured consistent appropriate lending distribution across private banking programs that served both individual family needs and community wealth development excellence requirements. The institutional banking infrastructure that I had helped design and implement served as the model for Northeast private wealth management, with financial institutions in other states consulting our protocols for guidance on family banking coordination, estate wealth management, and compliance implementation that balanced beneficiary expectations with regulatory optimization throughout the most complex financial planning scenarios. My expertise had been featured in banking industry publications, including Private Banker International, Family Wealth Report, and the Journal of Wealth Management, and consulted by private wealth firms throughout the region who wanted to implement similar wealth administration systems and automated protocols that served both individual family needs and multi-generational banking monitoring requirements. Bradley's comfortable life in his luxurious Greenwich estate, which he considered evidence of his real estate development success and strategic business acumen, was actually supported by the kind of seamless banking coordination and institutional financial administration that I had been creating and maintaining throughout my entire career. The perfect lending coordination that ensured his development projects maintained excellent financial positioning. The smooth regulatory approvals that had helped him during his business expansion transition 3 years ago, the comprehensive financial support that enabled his aggressive development strategy, and the banking coordination that provided lending optimization for his luxury lifestyle, all depended on the kind of sophisticated institutional wealth management and private banking administration that required exactly the expertise I had been developing for over 4 decades. The Morrison family estate, where Bradley lived and conducted his business operations, represented not just impressive Connecticut real estate, it was a testament to the sophisticated financial planning and banking coordination that had elevated our family from middle-class origins to multi-generational wealth status over the course of my professional career. The beautifully appointed 12,000-square-foot colonial mansion, featuring hand-carved millwork, imported Italian marble, and professionally landscaped grounds, spanning 4.7 acres of pristine Connecticut countryside, reflected the kind of institutional banking support and strategic wealth management that enabled families to transition from modest circumstances to establishment status within exclusive communities that required both financial credentials and social position. The estate's location in the prestigious Round Hill section of Greenwich, where property values averaged $3.8 million, and neighborhood residents included hedge fund managers, Fortune 500 executives, and established Connecticut families whose wealth extended back multiple generations, represented the culmination of strategic financial planning that began when I first established our family trust structures in 19. The property itself had been acquired through a complex financing arrangement that involved coordinated lending from 3 different private banking institutions, optimized tax planning through offshore trust vehicles, and regulatory compliance with Connecticut estate planning statutes that required extensive legal documentation and ongoing administrative oversight. Bradley's real estate development company, Morrison Development Group, operated from the estate's converted carriage house, which had been transformed into a sophisticated business center, featuring architectural drafting stations, project management system, and client presentation facilities that enabled him to coordinate his 12 active development projects throughout Fairfield County and Lower Westchester County. His business model focused on luxury residential developments and commercial properties that served Connecticut's most affluent communities, with projects ranging from $3.2 million custom homes in New Canaan to mixed-use commercial developments in downtown Stamford that required sophisticated financing structures and regulatory approval process. The success of Morrison Development Group reflected not only Bradley's architectural training and business development skills, but also the comprehensive financial backing and institutional support that had been carefully orchestrated through my private banking relationships over multiple years. His ability to secure development financing at preferential rates, navigate complex zoning approval processes, and maintain the substantial cash flow required for simultaneous project management across multiple jurisdictions, all depended on the kind of institutional credibility and banking relationships that I had cultivated throughout my Wall Street career. Bradley's lifestyle reflected the financial freedom and social positioning that distinguished successful Connecticut developers from those who struggled with project financing and regulatory complications. His collection of luxury vehicles, including a 2023 Porsche, a 2022 Mercedes-Benz G-Class for business use, and his wife Sarah's 2023 BMW X7, owned in premium automotive assets that most developers couldn't afford without compromising their project financing capabilities or accumulating personal debt that could affect their business credibility and banking relationship. The monthly expenses associated with maintaining the Morrison family lifestyle, including the estate's property taxes exceeding $47,000 annually, insurance premiums for multiple properties and vehicles, household staff coordination, private school tuition for their two children at Greenwich Academy and Brunswick School, and membership fees at the Round Hill Club and Greenwich Country Club created financial obligations that exceeded dollars monthly and required the kind of consistent cash flow and credit access that most real estate developers found challenging to maintain during economic uncertainty or project development delays. But what Bradley completely failed to understand was that his comfortable lifestyle, business success, and social positioning weren't the natural result of superior development capabilities or exceptional business acumen. They were the direct result of institutional banking support and wealth coordination that I had been orchestrating through my professional network and private bank relationships throughout his entire adult life. The seamless financing experiences that he considered evidence of his business expertise were actually carefully coordinated support systems that required sophisticated institutional relationships and continuous coordination between multiple banking organizations and regulatory agencies. The Morrison Family Trust, which I had established during the early years of my career at Goldman Sachs' private banking division, operated with investment assets valued at 67 accredited to supporting promising family members who demonstrated both professional potential and character integrity that aligned with our family's values of hard work, community contribution, and respectful treatment of all family members regardless of age or circumstances. The Trust's mission statement emphasized the importance of creating opportunities for younger generations to focus on their professional development and family responsibilities rather than financial survival, enabling the next generation of successful Morrison family members to develop the stability and prosperity necessary for community leadership and family excellence. The beneficiary selection process that had identified Bradley as a trust recipient 8 years earlier had been based on his architectural education, business development potential, and character assessment evaluations that measured his commitment to family values and community contribution. The comprehensive evaluation that qualified him for institutional banking support included recommendations from professional colleagues, community service documentation, and personal statements that demonstrated his understanding of family responsibility and his commitment to maintaining the Morrison family tradition of professional excellence and community leadership. But perhaps most importantly, the Trust's beneficiary requirements included ongoing character assessment and demonstration of values that aligned with the Trust's mission of creating family members who understood both financial responsibility and family respect. The banking coordination agreement that Bradley had signed, though he had never fully understood the true source of his financial advantages, included specific provisions about maintaining character standards and demonstrating respect for family relationships and elderly family members that distinguished responsible beneficiaries from those who prioritized personal advancement over family loyalty and traditional values. The Trust's monitoring protocols included annual reviews of beneficiary professional progress, character development assessment and evaluation of how trust recipients treated family relationships and elderly family members. The comprehensive evaluation process that determined continued bank eligibility wasn't limited to business achievement. It included assessment of whether beneficiaries maintained the kind of character and values that justified continued investment in their lifestyle maintenance and professional development. Bradley's real estate development success and Connecticut's social positioning had always met the trust's professional standard, but the character assessment component of his beneficiary status had never been formally tested because family relationships and elderly respect hadn't been challenged during his intensive business development focus. The trust's protocols included specific provisions for character review when beneficiaries demonstrated behavior that conflicted with the values of family service and elderly respect that the trust considered essential for ethical banking eligibility and continued financial support. The irony of being dismissed as a space-consuming burden by the family members whose luxury lifestyle depended entirely on the banking coordination and institutional financial support that I had been orchestrating and protecting throughout their estate ownership experience was not lost on me. Systematic dismissal that I had experienced during family gatherings and holiday celebrations represented exactly the kind of character evidence that justified implementing comprehensive banking review protocols and trust eligibility reconsideration that could transform expected support into accountability assessment and character evaluation requirements. My modest two-bedroom apartment in nearby Cos Cob, which Bradley and Sarah had visited occasionally during family gatherings and considered evidence of my limited financial circumstances and modest retirement lifestyle, actually served as the primary coordination center for Morrison Banking Holdings operations. The simple furnishings and traditional decor that they observed during their infrequent visits concealed sophisticated banking systems, encrypted internet connections, and institutional wealth management infrastructure that maintained direct connectivity with private banking administrators at 47 financial institutions, and enabled immediate response to beneficiary emergencies or character assessment requirements that could affect banking eligibility and financial security throughout Connecticut's most exclusive residential community. The home office that appeared to casual visitors as a simple retirement workspace with basic computer equipment actually contained specialized private banking database systems and institutional wealth management hardware that provided direct access to Northeast Regional Banking Network, emergency funding protocols for family support, and secure connections to federal banking databases that required the highest levels of security clearance and professional authentication to access and maintain throughout the private banking community. The daily routine that Bradley and Sarah occasionally observed during family visits, which they interpreted as simple retirement activities and limited social engagement, actually included coordinating institutional banking operations that affected supervising emergency response protocols for financial crises that could disrupt wealth stability throughout multiple jurisdictions, and providing administrative consultation for federal banking officials who relied on accurate regional data for compliance analysis and regulatory coordination. October 8th had begun as what appeared to be routine coordination of family weekend plans and traditional family obligations that should have been easily managed through basic family consideration and elderly inclusion responsibility. My weekend visit to the Greenwich estate had been a regular family tradition for over 4 years, with consistent scheduling that included confirmed participation and family activity coordination that represented standard family protocol and basic elderly inclusion rather than unusual burden or exceptional demand on family members. The estate coordination that Sarah had been managing included extensive entertaining schedules for Bradley's business associates, client cultivation events for Morrison Development Group, and social obligations that accommodated their growing collection of community leadership responsibilities and professional networking requirements. The weekend planning that she typically coordinated included comprehensive space utilization,
for the family members who lived in the estate and consideration for the guest accommodations that had always included my regular family visit. But what made Bradley's systematic space appropriation particularly devastating was his comfortable assumption that elderly relatives should accommodate younger families' convenience through independent housing arrangements, rather than expecting family inclusion during estate planning decisions. The casual language that he used to dismiss my accommodation needs, "You don't need much space at your age," revealed months of strategic thinking about family space management that prioritized convenient business operations over elderly accommodation and family tradition maintenance. Conversation that followed his announcement revealed Bradley's complete confidence about family relationship management and his systematic approach to elderly accommodation. Minimization that treated my living space as complications requiring independent resolution rather than fair responsibilities, deserving immediate attention and priority consideration. The comfortable dismissal that he employed demonstrated months of strategic calculation about family loyalty optimization and business advancement that justified appropriating elderly living space during important client cultivation and business expansion planning. Sometimes the most expensive mistake you can make is assuming that institutional banking and private wealth coordination are automatic entitlements that continue regardless of how the beneficiaries treat the elderly relatives whose expertise created their opportunities. The storage accommodation that Bradley created for my housing would become the documented evidence of character priorities that justified redirecting banking assets and institutional funding to serve more deserving families who understood the value of both financial support and the elderly wisdom that created opportunities for meaningful financial security and authentic family contribution in exclusive communities that required both professional excellence and character integrity to access and maintain successfully. What my family never understood during all those years of treating me like a simple retired widow who needed help with basic smartphone features and online banking navigation was that their comfortable assumption about my limited technological capabilities revealed their complete ignorance of the institutional banking empire I had built throughout the global private wealth community, an empire that operated so seamlessly and efficiently that its very invisibility had become its greatest strength and my family's most dangerous vulnerability. The modest Coscob apartment, where I had lived for 6 years, which Bradley and Sarah considered evidence of my limited financial success and outdated lifestyle choices, actually served as the primary coordination center for the Northeast private banking network, equipped with quantum encrypted communication systems, dedicated fiber optic internet connections, and institutional wealth management infrastructure that maintained 24/7 connectivity with private banking institutions throughout 34 countries and enabled immediate response to market emergencies that could affect billions of dollars in wealth and institutional banking coordination activities. My living room, which appeared to casual visitors as a simple retirement space with traditional furniture and family photograph, contained sophisticated private banking database systems and institutional wealth management hardware that provided direct access to the primary servers at Goldman Sachs' private banking division, backup communication protocols for emergency wealth coordination, and secure connections to federal banking databases that required the highest levels of security clearance and professional authentication to access and maintain throughout the global private banking community. The technology setup that I had installed throughout my apartment represented over and specialized equipment and software licensing that enabled me to coordinate institutional banking activities, respond to family financial emergencies, and maintain the private wealth infrastructure that supported dozens of Connecticut families' most important banking management goals throughout Fairfield County, Westchester County, and selected premium residential areas in Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and the Hamptons region of Long Island. The multiple holographic displays that lined my home office walls showed real-time status information from private banking databases across 34 countries, automated alert systems that notified me of regulatory changes or compliance issues requiring immediate attention, and coordination interfaces that allowed me to communicate with banking professionals, federal financial officials, and trust administrators throughout the global private wealth region, but beyond the physical infrastructure that supported my institutional banking coordination responsibility. What made my home-based operations particularly powerful was the comprehensive network of professional relationships and federal coordination protocols that I had developed throughout my 42-year career in private wealth management and institutional banking administration. The daily video conferences that my family occasionally overheard weren't social conversations with retired colleagues. They were strategic consultations with federal banking administrators, crisis coordination with regulatory development officials, and technical support for private banking institutions that processed billions of dollars in daily wealth distribution throughout North America and international markets. The Hartwell Institute for Banking Excellence, which I had established during the final years of my career at Goldman Sachs' private banking division, had become the most respected private wealth training program in the United States, providing advanced education for institutional banking coordinators, federal compliance officials, and private wealth professionals who needed expertise in multi-institution banking integration, regulatory protocol implementation, and crisis response coordination that maintained family stability during market emergencies and institutional banking complications.
Our institute accepted only 6 participants annually through an application process, more competitive than federal banking positions, requiring extensive experience in private wealth management, institutional banking administration, or family trust coordination before candidates qualified for consideration. The program fee of $47,000 reflected both the specialized nature of our training and the career advancement opportunities that graduation provided for banking professionals seeking leadership positions in federal agencies, institutional banking administration, or private wealth organizations. The waiting list for admission to Hartwell Institute extended over 5 years, with applications from senior private banking professionals at major wealth management firms, federal financial officials seeking advanced institutional banking training, trust administrators responsible for regulatory coordination and compliance oversight. Throughout multiple international jurisdictions, we regularly declined applications from Wall Street banking executives who lacked the specialized knowledge of family wealth systems and federal regulatory compliance that distinguished our program from general banking education and basic private wealth training. What made our program unique wasn't just the technical training quality, it was the federal coordination experience and professional networking opportunities that came with graduation from the most respected institutional banking program in North American private wealth administration. Hartwell Institute graduates received automatic consideration for federal banking positions that never advertised openings, gained access to our network of private wealth professionals and federal regulatory officials, and could leverage our consultation services to build careers in institutional banking management that would be impossible to achieve through traditional university education and standard banking administration advancement. The advanced curriculum that we provided included hands-on training in federal banking integration protocols, emergency response coordination during private wealth market crises, multi-institution banking coordination, family trust database management, and compliance implementation that protected family privacy while maintaining wealth access and federal financial monitoring capability. Our graduates managed private wealth databases for federal agencies, coordinated institutional banking operations for major metropolitan areas, and supervised wealth coordination operations for financial institutions that handled trillions of dollars in annual family assets. But perhaps the most significant aspect of the Hartwell Institute was our role in developing and implementing the next generation of private banking protocols that would determine how institutional wealth was managed securely and coordinated between private banking organizations and federal financial databases. The graduates from our program were leading technical innovation at organizations like the Federal Banking Regulation Authority, the American Private Wealth Management Association, and major institutional banking systems, implementing compliance protocols for federal agencies, and coordinating private wealth management for state financial systems throughout the United States, Canada, and selected international banking programs. The professional relationships that had developed through our institute included direct connections with senior executives at every major private banking firm, federal financial officials responsible for global institutional banking coordination, and private wealth professionals who managed banking systems for federal governments, regulatory agencies, and institutional banking development departments throughout North America, Europe, Asia Pacific, and selected emerging market banking programs. These relationships represented decades of professional collaboration and mutual respect that created opportunities for strategic coordination and immediate response capabilities that most private banking professionals could never access or afford. My daily routine, which my family observed during their infrequent visits and considered evidence of simple retirement activities and limited social engagement, actually included coordinating institutional banking operations that affected over 6, supervising emergency response protocols for market failures that could disrupt family wealth throughout multiple countries, and providing technical consultation for federal officials who relied on accurate global data for regulatory analysis and private wealth allocation coordination. The morning schedule that began each day at 4:15 a.m. included reviewing overnight system alerts from private banking databases across 34 countries, analyzing automated error reports that identified potential compliance issues or wealth coordination integrity problems requiring immediate attention, coordinating with federal financial databases that synchronized with our regional systems during off-peak hours, and implementing system updates that maintained compliance protocols and improved database performance for millions of family records and institutional banking transactions. The afternoon coordination activities included supervising wealth integration between private banking exchanges and federal agencies, troubleshooting system errors that affected institutional banking allocation visibility and family application processing, coordinating with federal officials who needed accurate global data for policy analysis and private wealth coordination, and managing crisis response protocols during market volatility that required immediate coordination between multiple federal agencies and private institutional banking organizations. The evening consultation work included providing technical guidance for private wealth professionals who encountered banking errors or system integration problems, coordinating with international firms that implemented our protocols for institutional banking management systems in other countries, and conducting strategic planning with federal officials who relied on our expertise for national database modernization and compliance enhancement initiatives. But beyond the technical coordination responsibilities that occupied most of my daily schedule, what made my institutional banking expertise particularly valuable was my comprehensive understanding of how private wealth systems affected individual families and communities throughout the United States, Canada, Europe, and Asia Pacific region. Every family who received timely private wealth distributions, every beneficiary who operated efficiently, every trust grant that reached appropriate recipients, and every emergency response that coordinated effectively represented the successful implementation of systems and protocols that I had spent decades developing, refining, and maintaining. The Goldman Sachs private banking division, where I had spent my entire career, wasn't just a regional institutional banking contractor, it was the exclusive provider of coordination services for the Federal Private Wealth Administration's North American Regional Integration Network, coordinating family institutional banking funding for over 2,800 federal jurisdictions, 7 major metropolitan financial areas, and managing wealth integration with 37 different private banking exchanges across 18 countries. Our systems processed over $27.3 billion in annual institutional banking transactions, coordinated family wealth development for over 1,040 different firms and trust organizations, and maintained the infrastructure that enabled platforms like Federal Financial Administration, private family trusts, and institutional banking networks to provide effective private wealth management and family banking coordination for thousands of North American and international families. The scope of our institutional banking management operations required coordination with the Department of Treasury for Private Wealth Compliance and Audit Support, the Federal Reserve for Institutional Banking Program Integration, the Internal Revenue Service for Family Wealth Program Compliance Verification, the Securities and Exchange Commission for Banking Coordination and Regulatory Oversight, and the Department of Homeland Security for Family Financial Verification and Security Monitoring, that supported both individual privacy protection and national security requirements. My security clearance level required annual background investigations, financial audits, psychological evaluation, and professional competency assessments that ensured only the most qualified and trustworthy institutional banking professionals maintained access to systems that could affect national financial programs, regional family stability, and federal private wealth policy development. The clearance process included polygraph examinations, extensive interviews with professional colleagues and federal officials, and continuous monitoring that verified my continued reliability and commitment to maintaining the highest standards of professional integrity and system security. The technical innovations that I had developed during my career included automated integration protocols that synchronized private wealth data between institutional banking databases and federal financial systems, compliance algorithms that protected family privacy while maintaining institutional banking accessibility, error detection systems that identified wealth irregularities before they affected family banking, and crisis response protocols that maintained system stability during equipment failures or cybersecurity incidents that could affect millions of family records and trillions of dollars in institutional banking activity. These innovations had been adopted by private banking firms throughout North America, implemented by federal agencies for national database modernization, and licensed to international institutional banking organizations that wanted to implement similar integration systems and compliance protocols for family wealth management in European Union countries, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, and Pacific Rim nations seeking to modernize their financial systems and improve coordination between government agencies and private institutional banking organizations. The consulting contracts that I had negotiated with federal agencies included ongoing technical support for database modernization projects, emergency response coordination during system failures that affected multiple country compliance assessment and enhancement for federal private wealth databases, and strategic planning for next-generation institutional banking technology that would improve system integration and reduce financial management costs, while maintaining accuracy and security standards that protected both individual family privacy and federal financial monitoring capability. But perhaps the most significant aspect of my institutional banking administration authority was my role in determining which families received priority processing and optimal wealth visibility throughout the North American regional family private banking network. The integration protocols that I had designed included automated quality assessment algorithms that evaluated institutional banking applications for appropriateness and completeness, determined wealth positioning based on family need and character stat, and implemented enhanced allocation protocols for families who met the highest standards for community impact and character potential. This meant that families associated with my personal relatives had always received the most favorable institutional banking treatment possible, priority processing for wealth coordination, enhanced distribution visibility that attracted maximum financial benefit, expedited application coordination that reduced approval timeframes, and automated compliance verification that prevented administrative problems from affecting their private wealth access or banking status. The seamless investment experiences that Bradley and Sarah had always enjoyed weren't natural consequences of real estate development, excellence, or superior financial management. They were the direct result of institutional banking preferences and technical advantages that I had been providing through my coordination authority and system. Bradley's comfortable life in his Greenwich estate had benefited from perfect institutional banking services, coordination, seamless private wealth processing, and enhanced banking allocation that attracted maximum investment support because I had implemented distribution protocols that ensured optimal wealth visibility and financial accuracy. The smooth regulatory approval processes that had helped him during his apartment-to-home ownership transition 6 years ago had benefited from expedited verification and automated compliance checking that reduced approval timeframes and prevented common administrative delays that affected most institutional banking applications. The comprehensive private wealth services that enabled his Connecticut lifestyle reflected banking coordination that I had maintained between institutional banking systems and federal financial databases, preventing the service gaps and administrative complications that could have significantly affected his access to wealth development and investment support. The excellent banking rates that supported his lifestyle maintenance, the emergency institutional banking programs that provided additional support, and the private wealth infrastructure that supported his family luxury, all depended on institutional banking coordination and wealth management that required exactly the kind of technical expertise and federal coordination that I had been providing throughout my entire career. Bradley James Morrison presented himself to his professional colleagues as a self-made Connecticut success story, the ambitious grandson of a retired banking professional who had earned his way into estate homeownership through real estate development, excellence, and financial responsibility. His carefully constructed narrative of individual achievement and personal wealth management reflected the kind of bootstrap mythology that resonated with his development colleagues and Greenwich neighbors, who admired his apparent financial independence and family stability. The story that Bradley told about his homeownership journey emphasized his professional achievements at Morrison Development Group, where he had advanced from junior project coordinator to company owner, while maintaining consistently high client satisfaction ratings and contributing to Connecticut development growth through innovative residential construction development. His estate home purchase had been celebrated by colleagues and friends as evidence of his exceptional career advancement and dedication to family financial excellence. During his homeownership experience, Bradley had distinguished himself through property improvements that earned recognition from neighborhood associations, community involvement that demonstrated his commitment to local development, and financial management that positioned his family as models of Connecticut's success. His home technology projects had included smart home implementation, energy efficiency upgrades, and business improvements that increased property value and community appeal while showcasing his technical expertise. The Connecticut achievements that Bradley proudly displayed throughout his home, framed development awards, community recognition certificate, and family accomplishment photographs, told the story of a dedicated family man who had earned every opportunity through professional rigor and financial responsibility. His real estate development successes, community leadership roles, and family development recognitions created a comprehensive picture of Connecticut achievement that justified his confident approach to family financial planning and community engagement. But what Bradley's carefully curated success narrative completely omitted was any acknowledgement of the institutional banking support system that had made his homeownership achievements possible. The private wealth development that had covered his the regulatory coordination that had enabled him to qualify for premium financial turned, and the emergency institutional banking assistance that had provided stability during unexpected business expenses, all remained invisible in his personal story of individual achievement and family financial responsibility. The lifestyle that Bradley maintained in his Greenwich neighborhood reflected financial freedom that distinguished him from his professional peers, who struggled with mortgage debt exceeding $1.2 million, worked additional consulting projects to supplement their income, and managed tight household budgets to afford Connecticut living expenses. Bradley's ability to maintain premium home improvements, pursue expensive family activities, and invest in lifestyle enhancements without financial pressure created a comfortable buffer that enabled him to excel professionally, while his colleagues balanced career demands with economic constraints. Bradley's social media presence, which he maintained to network with real estate development professionals and document his family progression, featured photographs of home improvement projects, family vacation experience, and professional networking activities
that reflected the lifestyle of a successful Connecticut real estate development professional rather than a financially struggling developer. His LinkedIn and Facebook profiles showcased professional achievements, community involvement, and family development activities that reinforced his image as a rising star in Connecticut development leadership. The professional networking that Bradley maintained, membership in development associations, attendance at industry conferences, and participation in community development organizations, reflected investment in his career development that exceeded what most developers could afford on their business income. His collection of professional development resources, real estate development reference materials, and industry publications represented thousands of dollars in career investment that distinguished his preparation from colleagues who relied on company-provided resources and basic professional development to manage their career advancement. Bradley's approach to community involvement included membership in neighborhood associations, volunteer activities with local organizations, and participation in family development programs that required time and financial investment beyond the basic requirements of Connecticut community citizenship. His additional certifications, continuing education activities, and professional networking investments reflected comprehensive family planning that assumed financial stability and freedom from the economic pressures that limited his neighbors' community engagement opportunity. The confidence that Bradley displayed in professional and community settings reflected his comfortable assumption that his lifestyle and opportunities were the natural result of his career achievements and financial capability. His interactions with real estate development colleagues, neighborhood leaders, and community organization members demonstrated the self-assurance of someone who had never experienced serious financial insecurity or questioned the stability of his institutional banking support system. But perhaps the most revealing aspect of Bradley's character was his complete lack of curiosity about the financial mechanisms that supported his comfortable lifestyle, the private wealth distributions that arrived without application process, the regulatory approvals that processed without personal financial management complications, and the emergency institutional banking that appeared during unexpected business expenses, never prompted questions about the source or sustainability of his wealth support system. The attitude that Bradley had developed toward family relationships reflected his comfortable assumption that his success was entirely self-generated, and that elderly relatives represented obligations that interfered with his professional advancement, rather than potential sources of wisdom, support, or connection. His approach to family gatherings, holiday visits, and elderly care responsibilities demonstrated the kind of calculated relationship management that prioritized professional networking over traditional family values. Sarah Michelle Cavendish Morrison had constructed an even more elaborate narrative of personal achievement and independent success, presenting herself as a modern Connecticut socialite who had built her lifestyle through strategic thinking and social excellence, while maintaining perfect work-life balance and family financial management. Her carefully curated professional image emphasized her transition from entry-level marketing coordinator at a Manhattan public relations firm to successful Greenwich society leader, while managing household responsibilities that demonstrated her capability and organizational expertise. The social projects that Sarah had developed through her involvement with the Greenwich Community Foundation had earned recognition from lifestyle publications, charity leadership awards, and sponsorship opportunities that positioned her as one of Connecticut's most promising social development leaders. Her volunteer portfolio included luxury fundraising events, high-end charity organizations, and exclusive collaboration projects that generated significant community impact and established her reputation as a strategic social professional capable of managing complex partnerships and community relations. Sarah's approach to work-life balance had become a model for other Connecticut wives in her professional network, with featured articles in lifestyle publications, speaking engagements at social development conferences, and mentor relationships with younger community leaders who sought her guidance about balancing community advancement with family responsibilities. Her systematic approach to time management and family coordination had earned recognition that extended beyond her immediate professional circle. The home management system that Sarah had developed for coordinating family schedules, estate maintenance, and community involvement, reflected sophisticated organizational skills that impressed neighbors, friends, and professional colleagues who struggled to balance similar responsibilities without her apparent efficiency and success. Her ability to maintain a pristine estate, coordinate children's activities, and excel professionally created an image of superwoman capabilities that distinguished her from working mothers who made visible compromises between career and family obligations. But what made Sarah's confidence particularly problematic was her systematic dismissal of elderly relatives and her professional assessment of which family relationships deserved her time and attention. The strategic thinking that she applied to family relationship management reflected a comfortable assumption that elderly relatives represented inefficient use of time and emotional energy that could be better invested in career advancement and family development activities that contributed to her professional success and Connecticut lifestyle maintenance. Sometimes the most dangerous assumption you can make about institutional banking and private wealth management is that they represent permanent entitlements that continue automatically regardless of character development and family relationship management. The elderly relatives who Sarah dismissed as time-consuming obligations included the very person whose private wealth expertise and institutional banking authority had created every financial opportunity and lifestyle advantage that she considered evidence of her individual achievement and family success in competitive environments that required both professional excellence and character integrity to navigate successfully. The institutional banking infrastructure that had operated invisibly throughout Sarah's comfortable assumptions about her family's financial independence would soon become the most visible lesson of her life about the true meaning of private wealth and the critical importance of treating elderly relatives with the respect and appreciation that their lifetime of professional service and generous support deserved, rather than dismissing them as outdated inconveniences during family gatherings and lifestyle advancement activities that prioritized individual achievement over authentic family relationships and traditional values. The network of professional relationships and institutional connections that I had cultivated throughout my 42-year career in private banking and wealth management represented the most comprehensive financial coordination system ever assembled by a single banking professional, spanning governmental regulatory bodies, international financial institutions, central banking organizations, and emerging market development agencies across 7 continents, creating a web of influence and authority that could instantly affect the financial stability of thousands of families, while remaining completely invisible to beneficiaries who assumed their comfortable lifestyles were the result of individual achievement, rather than sophisticated institutional banking infrastructure. My direct communication protocols with the Federal Reserve's Private Banking Oversight Division included daily coordination meetings at 5:30 a.m. Eastern Time, weekly strategic planning sessions for national private wealth policy development, and emergency response authorization that enabled me to implement immediate protective measures during market volatility that could affect the financial security of over 3.7 million American families whose private wealth portfolios depended on the stability and coordination that my technical expertise provided through advanced institutional bank integration and federal compliance management system. The secure communication channels that connected my COSCOB Operations Center to the Treasury Department's Office of Financial Institutions policy operated through military-grade encrypted satellite networks that processed over 1.2 million individual private wealth transactions daily, coordinated wealth distribution between family trust systems and federal oversight networks, while maintaining the privacy protections and security protocols that distinguished legitimate institutional banking management from speculative investment activities that could destabilize regional financial markets and compromise national economic security interests. But perhaps the most significant aspect of my federal coordination responsibilities was my role as the primary civilian consultant for the Department of Homeland Security's Financial Intelligence Unit, providing technical expertise for private wealth tracking systems that identified potential money laundering activities, terrorist financing operations, and international fraud schemes that threatened both individual family security and national financial stability. through sophisticated institutional banking analysis and pattern recognition algorithms that I had personally developed during my tenure at Goldman Sachs' private banking division. The international coordination protocols that I maintained with private banking regulatory agencies in 47 countries required daily communication with financial oversight officials in London, Frankfurt, Tokyo, Singapore, Sydney, Toronto, Zurich, and emerging market capitals throughout Latin America, Eastern Europe, and Southeast Asia, ensuring that the institutional banking movements coordinated through my family trust network remained compliant with international banking regulations and anti-money laundering requirements that protected both individual beneficiary privacy and cross-border financial transparency obligations. My position as a founding member of the Global Private Banking Coordination Council provided direct access to policy development discussions with central bank officials from the European Central Bank, Bank of Japan, Swiss National Bank, Bank of England, Reserve Bank of Australia, Bank of Canada, and monetary authorities throughout the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation region, enabling me to anticipate regulatory changes that could affect family wealth planning and implement protective strategies that maintained beneficiary financial security during periods of international policy adjustment and market uncertainty. The technical specifications that I had contributed to the International Monetary Fund's private banking integration framework had been adopted by over 140 countries as the global standard for institutional banking regulation and family wealth coordination, establishing compliance protocols, balanced individual privacy rights with governmental oversight responsibilities, while creating the infrastructure foundation that enabled legitimate family institutional banking management to operate efficiently across international borders and regulatory jurisdictions.
The private consulting contracts that I maintained with major global financial institutions, including JP Morgan Chase, Private Bank, Bank of America Private Banking, Wells Fargo Private Bank, Morgan Stanley Wealth Management, UBS Global Wealth Management, and Credit Suisse Private Banking, provided ongoing technical support for security enhancement projects, regulatory compliance optimization, and family wealth coordination systems that processed over $47.8 billion in monthly institutional banking transactions, while maintaining the accuracy and transparency standards required by federal oversight agencies and international regulatory coordination protocols. My advisory role with the Securities and Exchange Commission's Division of Investment Management included quarterly briefings on private wealth market trends, monthly reports on family banking coordination pattern, and immediate notification protocols for any institutional banking irregularities that could indicate market manipulation, insider trading activity, or coordinated schemes that threaten the integrity of private wealth markets and the financial security of individual investors and family trust beneficiaries throughout the United States and international banking network. The institutional banking infrastructure projects that I had supervised for the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation included developing emergency response protocols for private banking institution failures, creating deposit insurance frameworks for family wealth institutions, and establishing coordination systems that protected family assets during financial institution crises, while maintaining the stability and confidence that distinguished legitimate institutional banking from speculative investment platforms that posed systemic risks to the broader financial system. But beyond the governmental and regulatory coordination that occupied significant portions of my professional responsibility, the private sector relationships that I had developed throughout the institutional banking industry provided unparalleled access to market intelligence, technological innovation, and strategic partnerships that enabled me to optimize family wealth management in ways that exceeded what traditional financial advisors could achieve through conventional investment approaches and standard portfolio management techniques. My position on the board of directors for the Private Banking Association, the leading institutional banking industry advocacy organization, representing over 280 major private wealth companies, provided direct access to policy development discussions, regulatory strategy coordination, and technological advancement planning that influenced the future direction of private banking markets and the competitive landscape that determined which investment opportunities provided optimal returns for family wealth development and long-term financial security planning. The venture capital partnerships that I had established with leading institutional investment firms, including Blackstone Private Wealth Solutions, KKR Private Banking, Apollo Global Management, Carlyle Private Banking, and Bridgewater Associates, created exclusive access to early-stage private wealth projects and institutional banking technology investments that provided family trust beneficiaries with opportunities to participate in financial development before these investments became available to general market participants, ensuring that qualified families maintained competitive advantages in wealth accumulation and financial independence achievement. My consulting relationship with major institutional investors, including Vanguard Private Banking, Fidelity Private Wealth Management, Charles Schwab Private Banking, Rowe Price Private Client Services, provided ongoing market analysis and strategic guidance for private wealth portfolio optimization, enabling family trusts to coordinate their institutional banking allocations with institutional investment flows, while maintaining the independence and flexibility that distinguished family wealth management from corporate investment strategies that prioritized institutional returns over individual beneficiary security and long-term family financial stability. The academic partnerships that I had developed with leading university private banking research programs, including Wharton's Wealth Management Initiative, Harvard Business School's Private Banking Research Center, Stanford's Family Wealth Studies Program, and Columbia's Institutional Banking Institute, provided access to cutting-edge technological developments, regulatory analysis, and market research that enabled family wealth coordination to incorporate the most advanced institutional banking innovations and anticipate future private wealth opportunities before they became widely recognized investment categories. These academic collaborations included guest lectures at executive education programs, research publications in peer-reviewed private banking journals, and participation in international conferences that brought together the world's leading institutional banking technologists, regulatory officials, and private wealth investors, creating networking opportunities and knowledge exchange that enhanced my ability to provide family trust beneficiaries with the most sophisticated institutional banking management and strategic wealth planning available in the global private banking market. The technology companies that had implemented my institutional banking coordination protocols included major cloud computing providers, cybersecurity firms, and financial software developers, whose systems processed the majority of private wealth transactions worldwide, ensuring that the technical infrastructure supporting family wealth coordination remained at the forefront of technological innovation, while maintaining the security standards and compliance protocols required for legitimate institutional banking management and federal regulatory approval. My patents for private banking security algorithms, institutional banking integration protocols, and family wealth coordination systems had been licensed by over 450 technology companies worldwide, generating royalty income that exceeded $4.7 million annually while establishing technical standards that influenced the development of institutional banking infrastructure throughout the global private wealth industry and created additional revenue streams that enhanced the overall financial strength of family trust operations and beneficiary support capability. The Morrison Foundation for Financial Education, which I had established with a $28 million endowment, provided scholarships for promising students pursuing institutional banking studies, research grants for private wealth security development, and public education programs that promoted financial literacy among elderly populations who had been excluded from technological advancement due to age discrimination and inadequate educational resources that failed to address the unique learning needs and security concerns of senior citizens interested in private wealth investment and institutional banking management. The Foundation's annual conference, the International Symposium on Family Wealth Coordination, attracted over 1,000 hired participants from governmental agencies, academic institutions, and private sector organizations, creating the premier forum for discussing the intersection of institutional banking technology, family wealth planning, and regulatory compliance that shaped industry best practices and influenced policy development at both national and international levels of governmental and private sector banking coordination. But perhaps the most significant aspect of my professional network was the informal coordination system that I had developed with other family wealth managers and institutional banking professionals who specialized in multi-generational private wealth planning, creating a confidential consultation network that enabled immediate response to beneficiary emergencies, character assessment challenges, and family crisis situations that required sophisticated intervention and coordinated support from multiple professionals with expertise in both institutional banking management and family relationship dynamics. This informal network included former colleagues from Goldman Sachs' private banking division, who now managed institutional banking operations for other major financial institutions, regulatory officials who had transitioned to private sector consulting roles, and private wealth entrepreneurs had successfully built institutional banking companies and understood both the technical requirements and family relationship challenges associated with managing significant private wealth portfolios across multiple generations of beneficiaries with varying levels of technological sophistication and character development. The monthly coordination meetings that this network conducted through secure video conferencing systems provided opportunities to discuss challenging beneficiary situations, share successful intervention strategies, and coordinate responses to family emergencies that required immediate financial support combined with character accountability measures that distinguished temporary assistance from long-term dependency relationships that could undermine beneficiary development and family respect obligations. Role as the unofficial coordinator for this network reflected both my technical expertise in institutional banking management and my successful track record in managing difficult family situations where beneficiaries had developed entitlement attitudes or demonstrated systematic disrespect for elderly relatives whose wealth coordination made their comfortable lifestyles possible, providing other professionals with proven strategies for implementing accountability measures while maintaining family relationships and achieving positive character development out. The case studies that I had documented and shared with this professional network included detailed analysis of intervention techniques, character assessment protocols, and family healing processes that had successfully transformed entitled beneficiaries into respectful family members who understood both the value of elderly wisdom and their responsibilities as recipients of institutional banking, creating a knowledge base that enhanced the effectiveness of family wealth coordination throughout the private banking professional community. These intervention strategies had been successfully implemented by network members in over 240 different family situations, ranging from minor disrespect issues to systematic elderly abuse cases that required comprehensive wealth coordination suspension and intensive character development programs before beneficial relationships could be restored and institutional banking support could resume under modified terms that ensured ongoing family respect and elderly appreciation, rather than continued entitlement attitudes and systematic family dismissal. The success rate of these intervention programs exceeded, with beneficiaries demonstrating sustained character improvement and family respect maintenance for periods extending beyond 7 years after intervention completion, validating the effectiveness of coordinated accountability measures and character development requirements as essential component of responsible family wealth management and sustainable institutional banking coordination that served both individual development and broader community benefit through authentic family relationship modeling and elderly respect demonstration. The international recognition that our network had received from private banking regulatory agencies, family wealth management organizations, and academic research institutions reflected the innovative approach that we had developed for combining technical expertise with family relationship education, creating a comprehensive model for responsible institutional banking management that prioritized character development alongside financial planning and established new standards for ethical private wealth coordination that influenced industry practices and regulatory expectations,
worldwide. My leadership role in developing these international standards for family institutional banking coordination had resulted in invitations to serve as an expert witness in federal court cases involving private wealth dispute, regulatory policy consultant for congressional hearings on institutional banking regulation, and technical advisor for international treaty negotiations regarding cross-border private wealth coordination and family asset protection during periods of economic uncertainty and market volatility. The congressional testimony that I had provided during Senate Banking Committee hearings on private wealth regulation had been instrumental in shaping federal policy regarding family institutional banking protection, elderly financial security, and character assessment requirements for private wealth beneficiaries, ensuring that regulatory frameworks recognized the importance of family respect obligations and elderly care responsibilities as essential components of legitimate wealth coordination, rather than optional considerations that could be ignored without consequence. The regulatory influence that I had achieved through my professional network and technical expertise created opportunities to advocate for policy frameworks that protected elderly private wealth holders from financial abuse, family manipulation, and systematic dismissal by younger relatives, assumed that advanced age indicated technological incompetence, rather than recognizing the professional expertise and wealth coordination authority that many elderly individuals had developed throughout distinguished careers in financial technology and institutional banking management. The White House Economic Council consultation work that I had performed during 3 different presidential administrations included strategic planning for national private wealth policy, crisis response coordination during international financial emergency, and technical guidance for federal agencies implementing new regulatory frameworks that affected family institutional banking and private wealth management throughout the United States and international partner countries. During the 2008 financial crisis, my emergency coordination protocols had been instrumental in maintaining stability for over 12,000 family trusts and preventing the kind of institutional banking panic that could have destroyed generational wealth for thousands of American families. The crisis response systems that I had developed enabled real-time coordination between federal agencies, private banking institutions, and international regulatory bodies, ensuring that family wealth remained protected while maintaining the transparency and accountability standards required for public confidence in private banking systems. The Federal Reserve's adoption of my institutional banking stress testing protocols had become the international standard for evaluating private wealth institutions' stability during economic uncertainty. These protocols had been implemented by central banks in 47 countries and had successfully predicted and prevented institutional banking failures that could have affected over $280 billion in family wealth across multiple international jurisdictions. My consulting work with the International Monetary Fund included developing emergency response protocols for sovereign debt crises that affected private banking institutions, creating coordination systems between national governments and private wealth organizations, and establishing technical standards for cross-border family asset protection during periods of political instability and economic uncertainty that threatened international private banking operations. The World Bank's Private Wealth Development Initiative, which I had helped design and implement, provided technical assistance and capacity building for emerging market countries seeking to establish legitimate private banking sectors and family wealth management infrastructure. The program had successfully helped 34 countries develop regulatory frameworks and institutional capabilities that protected family assets while maintaining compliance with international anti-money laundering and terrorism financing prevention requirements. But perhaps the most significant aspect of my international influence was my role in developing the Basel III Private Banking Accords, which established global standards for private wealth institution capital requirements, risk management protocol, and regulatory oversight procedures that protected both individual family assets and international financial system stability. These accords had been ratified by 27 countries and had become the foundation for modern private banking regulation worldwide. The European Union's adoption of my family wealth protection directives had created a unified regulatory framework that enabled private banking institutions to operate across national borders while maintaining the highest standards of client protection and regulatory compliance. These directives had been particularly important in preventing the kind of private wealth tax evasion and money laundering scandals that had previously undermined public confidence in institutional banking systems. My role as a senior advisor to the Financial Stability Board included developing early warning systems for systemic risks that could affect private banking institutions, creating coordination protocols between national regulatory agencies, and establishing technical standards for information sharing that protected both individual privacy rights and collective financial system security throughout the global private banking community. Sometimes the most powerful aspect of professional network development is the ability to coordinate immediate responses to family crisis situations while maintaining the confidentiality and privacy protections that distinguish legitimate intervention from public embarrassment or family humiliation that could damage relationships permanently rather than creating opportunities for character growth and authentic family healing that strengthened relationships and improved respect patterns for long-term family benefit and community modeling. The network coordination protocols that I had developed for responding to character assessment situations ensured that intervention measures were proportional to the severity of disrespect issues, focused on education rather than punishment, and designed to create sustainable behavior change rather than temporary compliance that would revert to problematic patterns when oversight pressure was removed or accountability measures were discontinued after insufficient character development and family respect established. The comprehensive nature of my professional network and the sophisticated coordination systems that connected governmental agencies, private sector organizations, academic institutions, and international regulatory bodies created an infrastructure foundation that enabled immediate response to beneficiary character issues while maintaining the professional standards and ethical obligations that distinguished responsible family wealth management from arbitrary financial control or manipulative family dynamics that could damage relationships and undermine trust, rather than create opportunities for growth, learning, and authentic relationship improvement based on mutual respect and shared family values. Bradley and Sarah's comfortable assumptions about their financial independence and lifestyle security were built on a foundation of institutional banking coordination and professional relationships that extended far beyond their comprehension or appreciation. The seamless private wealth services that they had always taken for granted represented the culmination of decades of professional development, international cooperation, technical innovation that required exactly the kind of expertise and authority that they had systematically dismissed as irrelevant to their modern Connecticut lifestyle and professional advancement strategy. The institutional banking empire that had operated invisibly throughout their comfortable assumptions about financial entitlement would soon become the most visible demonstration of professional authority and family accountability that the Connecticut private banking community had ever witnessed, proving that respect for elderly relatives isn't optional courtesy, it's the foundation for continued access to the sophisticated financial infrastructure that makes luxury lifestyles possible in competitive environments that require both professional excellence and character integrity to navigate successfully. October 8, 2024 began as what should have been a routine return from my quarterly board meeting with federal oversight officials at
the private consulting contracts that I maintained with major global financial institutions, including J.P. Morgan Chase, Private Bank, Bank of America Private Banking, Wells Fargo Private Bank, Morgan Stanley Wealth Management, UBS Global Wealth Management, and Credit Suisse Private Banking, provided ongoing technical support for security enhancement projects, regulatory compliance optimization, and family wealth coordination systems that processed over $47.8 billion in monthly institutional banking transactions, while maintaining the accuracy and transparency standards required by federal oversight agencies and international regulatory coordination protocols. My advisory role with the Securities and Exchange Commission's Division of Investment Management, included quarterly briefings on private wealth market trends, monthly reports on family banking coordination patterns, and immediate notification protocols for any institutional banking irregularities that could indicate market manipulation, insider trading activity, or coordinated schemes that threaten the integrity of private wealth markets and the financial security of individual investors and family trust beneficiaries throughout the United States and international banking network. The institutional banking infrastructure projects that I had supervised for the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation included developing emergency response protocols for private banking institution failures, creating deposit insurance frameworks for family wealth institutions, and establishing coordination systems that protected family assets during financial institution crises, while maintaining the stability and confidence that distinguished legitimate institutional banking from speculative investment platforms that posed systemic risks to the broader financial system. But beyond the governmental and regulatory coordination that occupied significant portions of my professional responsibility, the private sector relationships that I had developed throughout the institutional banking industry provided unparalleled access to market intelligence, technological innovation, and strategic partnerships that enabled me to optimize family wealth management in ways that exceeded what traditional financial advisors could achieve through conventional investment approaches and standard portfolio management techniques. My position on the board of directors for the Private Banking Association, the leading institutional banking industry advocacy organization, representing over 280 major private wealth companies, provided direct access to policy development discussions, regulatory strategy coordination, and technological advancement planning that influenced the future direction of private banking markets and the competitive landscape that determined which investment opportunities provided optimal returns for family wealth development and long-term financial security planning. The venture capital partnerships that I had established with leading institutional investment firms, including Blackstone Private Wealth Solutions, KKR Private Banking, Apollo Global Management, Carlyle Private Banking, and Bridgewater Associates, created exclusive access to early-stage private wealth projects and institutional banking technology investments that provided family trust beneficiaries with opportunities to participate in financial development before these investments became available to general market participants, ensuring that qualified families maintained competitive advantages in wealth accumulation and financial independence achievement. My consulting relationship with major institutional investors, including Vanguard Private Banking, Fidelity Private Wealth Management, Charles Schwab Private Banking, Rowe Price Private Client Services, provided ongoing market analysis and strategic guidance for private wealth portfolio optimization, enabling family trusts to coordinate their institutional banking allocations with institutional investment flows, while maintaining the independence and flexibility that distinguished family wealth management from corporate investment strategies that prioritized institutional returns over individual beneficiary security and long-term family financial stability. The academic partnerships that I had developed with leading university private banking research programs, including Wharton's Wealth Management Initiative, Harvard Business School's Private Banking Research Center, Stanford's Family Wealth Studies Program, and Columbia's Institutional Banking Institute, provided access to cutting-edge technological developments, regulatory analysis, and market research that enabled family wealth coordination to incorporate the most advanced institutional banking innovations and anticipate future private wealth opportunities before they became widely recognized investment categories. These academic collaborations included guest lectures at executive education programs, research publications in peer-reviewed private banking journals, and participation in international conferences that brought together the world's leading institutional banking technologists, regulatory officials, and private wealth investors, creating networking opportunities and knowledge exchange that enhanced my ability to provide family trust beneficiaries with the most sophisticated institutional banking management and strategic wealth planning available in the global private banking market. The technology companies that had implemented my institutional banking coordination protocols included major cloud computing providers, cybersecurity firms, and financial software developers, whose systems processed the majority of private wealth transactions worldwide, ensuring that the technical infrastructure supporting family wealth coordination remained at the forefront of technological innovation, while maintaining the security standards and compliance protocols required for legitimate institutional banking management and federal regulatory approval. My patents for private banking security algorithms, institutional banking integration protocols, and family wealth coordination systems had been licensed by over 450 technology companies worldwide, generating royalty income that exceeded $4.7 million annually while establishing technical standards that influenced the development of institutional banking infrastructure throughout the global private wealth industry and created additional revenue streams that enhanced the overall financial strength of family trust operations and beneficiary support capability. The Morrison Foundation for Financial Education, which I had established with a $28 million endowment, provided scholarships for promising students pursuing institutional banking studies, research grants for private wealth security development, and public education programs that promoted financial literacy among elderly populations who had been excluded from technological advancement due to age discrimination and inadequate educational resources that failed to address the unique learning needs and security concerns of senior citizens interested in private wealth investment and institutional banking management. The Foundation's annual conference, the International Symposium on Family Wealth Coordination, attracted over 1,000 hired participants from governmental agencies, academic institutions, and private sector organizations, creating the premier forum for discussing the intersection of institutional banking technology, family wealth planning, and regulatory compliance that shaped industry best practices and influenced policy development at both national and international levels of governmental and private sector banking coordination. But perhaps the most significant aspect of my professional network was the informal coordination system that I had developed with other family wealth managers and institutional banking professionals who specialized in multi-generational private wealth planning, creating a confidential consultation network that enabled immediate response to beneficiary emergencies, character assessment challenges, and family crisis situations that required sophisticated intervention and coordinated support from. "The truth is, Grandma Ruth," Bradley said with the confident dismissal that reflected months of strategic thinking about elderly accommodation management and family space optimization, "we've set up a really comfortable arrangement for you in the converted storage shed, since you don't need much to your space at your age. And we can't maintain guest accommodations that aren't being used efficiently when we have immediate business development requirements that affect our daily project coordination functionality and client relationship obligations." The phrase, "since you don't need much space at your age," represented the exact moment when Bradley's systematic elderly dismissal transformed from strategic family space management into documented evidence of character priorities that violated every provision of the Morrison Family Trust's beneficiary conduct requirements and family standards. His comfortable assertion that my bedroom accommodation wasn't being used efficiently revealed the complete extent of his elderly marginalization strategy and his fundamental disregard for traditional family values and elderly accommodation obligations. But what made this moment even more shocking was Bradley's casual gesture toward the back of the property, where I could see through the French doors that the former garden storage shed had indeed been converted into what appeared to be a small living space. The 8x12 wooden structure, originally designed for lawn equipment and seasonal storage, now featured a small window air conditioning unit, basic electrical wiring, and what appeared to be minimal furnishing visible through the single window. "I think you'll find it quite cozy," Sarah added, appearing from the kitchen with the same professional enthusiasm that characterized her community organization presentations. "We've made it really efficient with everything you could possibly need. There's a small bed, a basic table, and we even installed that window unit so you'll be comfortable. It's really quite charming. Like a little cottage retreat, where you can have complete privacy and quiet time without disturbing our business operation." As I stood in the foyer of the estate that I owned through my institutional banking trust, listening to my grandson and his wife explain why my bedroom had been converted into their business center, "because I don't need much space at your age, and I should be grateful for a converted storage shed arrangement," I experienced the devastating reality of elderly dismissal and family appropriation that would justify implementing institutional banking ownership consequences and trust reconsideration protocols that would transform their comfortable assumptions about developer lifestyle entitlement into the most expensive lesson about family respect and elderly appreciation any Connecticut family had ever received. I understand your position completely, Bradley and Sarah, I replied with the kind of professional composure that I had developed during 42 years of managing institutional banking crises and trust administration challenges. Thank you for clarifying your approach to family accommodation and elderly space allocation. I appreciate your honesty about the family priorities that guided this decision, and I'll make sure to adjust my planning and expectations accordingly going forward. The relief that appeared on both their faces revealed their comfortable assumption that elderly relatives would accept space appropriation and accommodation elimination without consequences or complications that might affect the family's lifestyle arrangements and financial stability. Professional confidence in their strategic communication had convinced them that elderly relationship management could be optimized through efficient conversation and expectation adjustment, without considering the potential implications for continued trust support and institutional bank ownership benefits. I'm so glad you understand, Grandma Ruth. Sarah continued with renewed enthusiasm about their business development achievement. I was hoping you'd appreciate the creative solution we found for maximizing our space utilization. The professional photographer is coming next Tuesday to document the business center installation for Bradley's company portfolio, and we're planning to feature it in our upcoming collaboration with Connecticut Development Magazine. It's going to be such a beautiful showcase of space optimization and business development innovation. The revelation that Sarah planned to profit professionally from appropriating my bedroom space, featuring the conversion in Bradley's business portfolio and Development Magazine collaboration, represented the final evidence of character assessment that would determine their family's continued eligibility for institutional banking support and financial security. Her comfortable assumption that she could leverage family space appropriation for professional advancement revealed her systematic approach to elderly relationship management that treated family obligations as business opportunities rather than responsibility. As I walked back to my car, carrying the flower arrangement that Bradley and Sarah had been too focused on their business development achievements to notice or acknowledge, I began processing the character assessment evidence that would determine their continued eligibility for institutional banking trust support and private wealth ownership benefits. The systematic elderly space appropriation that I had experienced represented exactly the kind of family respect violation that triggered comprehensive trust review protocols and beneficiary conduct evaluation procedures. The drive back to my Cos Cob apartment provided time to reflect on the years of anonymous institutional banking support that had enabled Bradley and Sarah's comfortable Greenwich lifestyle and their systematic development of elderly exclusion strategies that treated traditional family values as optional obligations interfering with business advancement and life's optimization. The private wealth infrastructure that had operated invisibly throughout their home ownership experience would soon become the most visible demonstration of ownership authority and family respect accountability that the Connecticut institutional banking community had ever witnessed. The evening of October 8th, as I sat in my modest apartment while Bradley and Sarah enjoyed their optimized family space in the estate, whose ownership and financial coordination I controlled, I began accessing the comprehensive institutional banking management systems that would transform their comfortable assumptions about developer lifestyle entitlement into the most expensive lesson about elderly respect and family appreciation that any Connecticut family had ever received. At 10:15 p.m., I initiated the first phase of what would become the most comprehensive beneficiary review in Connecticut institutional banking history by accessing the Morrison Family Trust's quantum encrypted database systems and implementing private wealth ownership assessment status for Bradley and James Morrison's institutional banking accounts. The administrative classification that I applied indicated potential beneficiary conduct violations requiring comprehensive character evaluation throughout the regional private wealth management network. The beneficiary assessment protocols that I activated included comprehensive coordination that affected Bradley's mortgage verification systems, property tax documentation, homeowner's insurance record, and equity access eligibility that determined his continued property ownership and residential planning security. The systematic nature of the classification modifications ensured that every platform and system connected to his home ownership expectations experienced coordinated changes, created immediate complications for his residential planning and long-term consequences for his family's financial security and lifestyle maintenance assumption. By 11:30 p.m., the first automated notifications had been generated by trust systems that detected beneficiary irregularities affecting Bradley's institutional banking status and private wealth coordination assessment. The alert protocols that I had implemented included federal notification requirements that triggered immediate evaluation of private wealth distribution eligibility and financial coordination assessment that could affect his family's wealth planning calculations, and continued investment access based on character evaluation standards and family respect verification protocols. The systematic trust actions that I implemented over the following 72 hours would transform Bradley and Sarah's comfortable assumptions about institutional banking ownership and financial entitlements into the most comprehensive demonstration of private wealth authority that the region family banking community had ever witnessed. The evidence that I had compiled included every instance of their systematic elderly dismissal, every space appropriation decision, and every strategic calculation to treat family respect as optional expenses, interfering with business objectives and lifestyle management requirements. The first immediate impact of my institutional banking modifications became apparent when Bradley attempted to access their monthly private wealth coordination system at 7:45 a.m. on October 11th, and discovered that their institutional banking accounts had been classified as under beneficiary review character assessment by the Connecticut Regional Private Banking Authority. The panic that followed his discovery revealed the extent to which his family's financial stability and comfortable lifestyle depended on institutional banking distributions and trust coordination that he had never understood or appreciated during their systematic elderly dismissal and family space appropriation. The panicked phone call that I received came from Bradley at 9:15 a.m., with obvious desperation and confusion about the administrative complications that were affecting his institutional banking access and family financial plan. Grandma Ruth, something terrible is happening with our private wealth accounts and investment coordination, he announced with the kind of professional emergency language that revealed his immediate understanding of catastrophic financial implications. Our institutional banking distributions have been suspended, and the federal authority is requesting documentation about beneficiary conduct evaluation and family respect verification. The conversation that followed revealed Bradley's sudden recognition that the elderly grandmother he relegated to a storage shed might possess administrative capabilities and institutional banking authority that could affect his financial eligibility and investment security in ways he had never imagined or prepared for during months of strategic family relationship management and business development consultation. The Fairfield County Financial Authority is requesting immediate documentation about our institutional banking status and character assessment verification, Bradley continued with growing panic about the implications for his family's financial security and investment stability plan. This is affecting our private wealth standing and potentially compromising our equity access with programs that require verified ownership, backing, and accurate investment positioning. But perhaps the most devastating immediate impact was the effect on Bradley and Sarah's lifestyle planning. Property advancement negotiations that required verified institutional banking, backing, and accurate investment positioning to maintain their comfortable developer lifestyle and premium neighborhood access. The equity applications that they had been pursuing based on their guaranteed invest value became admissible to complete when financial institutions discovered that their primary institutional banking backing no longer qualified for verified ownership status or exclusive private wealth coordination. The prestigious neighborhood status that Bradley and Sarah had been maintaining. Greenwich required verified institutional banking backing and accurate investment positioning that distinguished authentic private wealth ownership from temporary arrangements and questionable wealth management.
that didn't reflect genuine financial stability and community credibility. The investment classification complications that I had implemented triggered immediate financial review and potential status suspension that could affect their annual lifestyle projections and community standing advancement. By the end of the first week, the comprehensive nature of Bradley and Sarah's institutional banking classification complications had generated legal consultation fees exceeding $89,000, administrative documentation requirements that consumed over 160 hours of their professional time, and financial standing complications that required extensive verification procedures and potential lifestyle restructuring based on investment status uncertainty and trust administration challenges. The second week brought expanded consequences as automated systems continued detecting classification irregularities that affected their financial planning applications, community standing verification, professional background checks that required verified institutional banking ownership for continued neighborhood participation, and business credibility eligibility. The systematic nature of the classification modifications created cascading effects throughout their personal and professional lives that required extensive time investment and legal consultation to understand and address through proper administrative channels. Sarah's position within the Greenwich social community came under immediate review when professional background verification systems detected institutional banking classification irregularities and financial standing complications that raised questions about her professional reliability and community credibility. The social consequences that followed included delayed charity leadership appointments, reduced collaboration opportunity, and community discussions about social qualification standards that required clean financial records and verified investment stability for continued program eligibility and advancement opportunities. Bradley's professional standing at Morrison Development Group faced similar scrutiny when companies discovered that his financial backing and institutional banking ownership status no longer met the verified investment requirements for major development contracts and client relationship management responsibility. The systematic loss of professional credibility and financial verification created business pressure that affected his ability to maintain his development trajectory and continue his advancement in commercial real estate specialization. During the third week of institutional banking classification consequences, Sarah's desperation reached a critical point that would transform this story from simple private wealth administration into a profound lesson about family values and character accountability. The comfortable lifestyle that she had built through systematic social advancement and strategic family relationship optimization was crumbling under the weight of trust review protocols that measured not only financial competence but also character integrity and family value. But the most shocking revelation came on October 29 when Bradley discovered the true ownership structure of their Greenwich estate through legal documentation required for the institutional banking status verification. The property records that his attorney obtained revealed that the estate, where they had lived for 6 years, was owned by Morrison Holdings LLC, with Ruth Elizabeth Hartwell-Morrison listed as the primary managing member and decision-making authority for all property-related matters. The moment of recognition that Bradley experienced when he realized that the elderly woman, whose bedroom he had converted into a business center, was actually the legal owner of their estate, represented the most devastating character assessment revelation in Connecticut institutional banking history. His systematic elderly dismissal and family space appropriation hadn't just violated family respect obligations, they had been directed toward the very person whose private wealth ownership authority determined his family's continued financial security and lifestyle maintenance. When Bradley called me on November 2nd with genuine terror in his voice and desperate confusion about the institutional banking ownership revelations affecting his family's financial security, something remarkable began to happen that would transform this story from simple private wealth administration into a profound lesson about family values and elderly respect. The confident real estate developer, who had dismissed me as a space-consuming burden, had been replaced by a young man who finally understood the connection between family respect and financial privilege, between elderly wisdom and institutional banking ownership opportunity.
Grandma Ruth, I think I've made the most terrible mistake of my life, Bradley said during our emotional conversation that would mark the beginning of his character transformation. I was so focused on optimizing our business development space and advancing my company that I completely lost sight of what really matters: respect for elderly relatives, appreciation for family tradition, and understanding that professional success means nothing if you achieve it by excluding and dismissing the people who support and care about your family's well-being. The genuine remorse that Bradley expressed during our conversation represented the first authentic character development that he had demonstrated since establishing his systematic approach to elderly relationship management. His recognition that business optimization without family respect was meaningless success revealed the kind of character growth that distinguished deserving financial support from permanent institutional banking privilege suspension. But rather than simply resuming their private wealth coordination and allowing them to continue their homeownership without consequences, I proposed something that would serve both character development and community benefit, while creating opportunities for authentic family healing and meaningful financial responsibility. The alternative that I developed would become the most innovative family intervention in institutional banking history, and the foundation for Bradley's transformation from systematic elderly dismissal to authentic family engagement and community service. Instead of permanently suspending Bradley and Sarah's institutional banking distributions, I created the Private Banking Community Responsibility Program that would operate for 36 months, providing financial literacy education and institutional banking coordination for elderly community members, while requiring their direct participation in elderly financial service under my supervision as program coordinator. The program would serve over 300 elderly community members during its operation, while creating opportunities for them to learn about family responsibility and elderly appreciation that distinguished meaningful community contribution from superficial business advance. The Private Banking Community Responsibility Program that we developed would require Bradley and Sarah to work alongside experienced financial literacy specialists, community development workers, and elderly service professionals who understood the value of traditional wisdom and generational respect, while providing essential institutional banking education to underserved elderly populations throughout Fairfield County and the greater Connecticut region. The program would combine their business expertise with community financial education that served both individual elderly needs and broader financial literacy advocacy. But perhaps the most significant aspect of the program was the requirement that Bradley and Sarah work directly under my supervision as program coordinator, learning about institutional banking administration and family trust management that would provide them with genuine understanding of the private wealth infrastructure that had been supporting their comfortable lifestyle throughout their systematic assumption that financial independence was self-funded rather than earned through character development and elderly respect. The transformation that began during the first month of the Private Banking Community Responsibility Program exceeded even my own expectations for what community service could accomplish when combined with character accountability and elderly recognition. Bradley's initial reluctance to participate in hands-on elderly financial work gradually evolved into genuine appreciation for the seniors we served and understanding of the administrative expertise required for effective institutional banking coordination and family trust management. The elderly community members who worked alongside Bradley and Sarah in the Private Banking Community Responsibility Program included retired banking professionals, former financial advisors, experienced community administrators, and institutional banking early adopters, whose lifetime of service and professional expertise provided daily examples of the elderly wisdom and community contribution that they had dismissed during their systematic family relationship restructuring and business career optimism. Frank Chen, a 87-year-old retired bank president,
who had spent 49 years developing institutional banking programs for major Connecticut financial institutions, became particularly influential in helping Bradley understand the connection between family respect and community respect.
"Young man," he told Bradley during their 15th week of working together, "I've seen thousands of families over the years, and I can tell you that the most successful communities always start with families that understand how to honor their elderly members and learn from generational wisdom, rather than dismissing us as obstacles to overcome." The institutional banking education training that Sarah received, alongside 79-year-old retired trust manager Dorothy Martinez, who had operated Connecticut's most respected private wealth education programs for elderly investors before retirement, provided daily demonstrations of how professional expertise and elderly experience could combine to create community impact that exceeded anything achievable through individual advancement or business optimism. Martinez's traditional financial principles and family engagement values challenged Sarah's assumptions about social success and personal satisfaction in ways that community development training had never provided. The elderly service responsibilities that Bradley and Sarah assumed under my supervision in coordinating community outreach, financial literacy advocacy, and institutional banking education distribution provided them with genuine understanding of private wealth expertise and the administrative complexity required for effective wealth coordination. Their work developing educational materials for the private banking community responsibility program, when focused on community benefit rather than business positioning, revealed their capacity for meaningful community contribution and authentic family engagement. The 36 months of private banking community responsibility program operation created measurable community impact that included coordinating institutional banking education for over 300 elderly community members, providing financial literacy training 2034 community members, and elderly advocacy and financial coordination, and creating ongoing support networks that continued serving seniors long after the formal program concluded. The success of the program attracted attention from institutional banking administrators throughout Connecticut and established a model for family-based community service that honored both elderly needs and intergenerational collaboration. But perhaps the most significant transformation was the change in Bradley and Sarah's understanding of family relationships and the value of elderly wisdom in creating meaningful community contribution. Their systematic elderly dismissal and business career optimization strategies were replaced by genuine appreciation for my institutional banking expertise and recognition of how family respect and community service could create personal satisfaction and family fulfillment that exceeded anything achievable through competitive business advancement and strategic family management. The business career that Bradley rebuilt after completing his community service focused on providing nonprofit financial development coordination and elderly institutional banking advocacy, rather than competitive luxury development, advancement, and business positioning. His work developing project strategies for elderly community organizations and senior financial education facilities generated meaningful professional satisfaction while providing genuine community contribution that distinguished authentic development practice from superficial career success and systematic family dismissal. Bradley's approach to professional development evolved to include nonprofit financial coordination and community advocacy initiatives that leveraged his development expertise for elderly benefit and family service support. His work developing educational content for financial literacy organization and senior advocacy groups provided career advancement opportunities while creating authentic community impact and family pride that exceeded anything he had achieved through systematic elderly dismissal and career optimization. The modest home in Westport where Bradley, Sarah, and their children moved during their community service period, costing $6,800 monthly and providing comfortable family living without luxury presentation requirement, became the foundation for authentic family relationships
and community engagement, rather than systematic business career development and elderly relationship management. The simple furnishings and traditional family activities that characterized their transformed lifestyle reflected genuine values and priorities that distinguished lasting happiness from temporary business positioning and systematic family disrespect. 7 years later, Bradley's transformation had become a model for family-based community service throughout Connecticut, with his story featured in community development publications and institutional banking administration journals as an example of how private wealth intervention could create family healing and authentic elderly appreciation. His work coordinating the annual Connecticut Family Financial Responsibility Network, which operated in 67 communities throughout the state, provided ongoing opportunities for meaningful contribution while maintaining the family relationships and elderly respect that he had learned through his financial service experience. The beautiful home in Mystic where Bradley, Sarah, and their children now live, purchased through their own legitimate financing after demonstrating sustained character development and family respect, provided comfortable family living while supporting their elderly advocacy work and maintaining proximity to the senior community members and family relatives whose wisdom and support had created the foundation for their transformation. The elegant but modest home that served as both family residence and occasional community meeting venue reflected their understanding that true satisfaction came from authentic relationships and community contribution rather than competitive business positioning and systematic elderly dismissal. Sarah's current position as Community Financial Advocacy Director at a Connecticut Department of Social Services, earning $182,000 annually, while coordinating elderly institutional banking programs and family financial education throughout the region, provided meaningful professional work that honored both her social expertise and her commitment to community service and family value. Her work developing financial advocacy programs and accessible banking services throughout Connecticut created genuine impact while maintaining the family relationships and elderly respect that distinguished authentic success from superficial social advancement. The Morrison Family Trust scholarship that I re-established for Bradley and Sarah after their successful completion of the private banking community responsibility program was restructured to include ongoing community service requirements and annual character assessments that ensured continued family respect and elder appreciation. The modified trust structure required quarterly volunteer coordination with elderly community members and annual family loyalty verification that distinguished deserving institutional banking recipients from those who might revert to systematic elderly dismissal and business career optimization thinking.
As I write this final chapter from my beautiful oceanfront home in Stonington, Connecticut, purchased with proceeds from my institutional banking consultation work, and serving as both family residence and community coordination center, I'm surrounded by family photographs that document our journey toward authentic relationships and mutual respect, professional commendations that honor my career achievements, and community recognition that celebrates the private banking community responsibility program's ongoing impact throughout the Connecticut region. The grandson who told me I could live in the storage shed, since you don't need much space at your age, discovered that respect for elderly relatives isn't optional accommodation. It's the foundation for institutional banking eligibility and private wealth coordination that determines whether families build meaningful legacies or destroy opportunities through systematic dismissal of generational wisdom and traditional values that created every financial advantage they considered evidence of individual achievement and business success. The bedroom that had been converted into a business development center became the foundation for a community financial program that served hundreds of elderly residents, while teaching Bradley and Sarah about the critical importance of elderly respect and family loyalty. The systematic career development strategy that had been used to appropriate elderly living space was transformed into community service that demonstrated how institutional banking administration and family healing could create opportunities for authentic contribution and meaningful personal satisfaction. But perhaps the most important legacy of this experience has been the broader recognition throughout the Connecticut Community Development Network that elderly expertise and traditional family values provide the foundation for sustainable community service and meaningful financial relations. The hundreds of families who have participated in private banking community responsibility programs understand that respecting elderly relatives and maintaining family loyalty creates opportunities for authentic community engagement and lasting personal satisfaction. My institutional banking consultation work continues expanding throughout the northeastern United States, with community development administrators in 18 states implementing our family-based financial models that honor both investment responsibility and intergenerational respect. The regional recognition of our approach to elderly inclusion and family-centered community service has created opportunities for meaningful contribution to financial literacy advocacy throughout the Atlantic coast. The Hartwell Institute for Banking Excellence has established the Bradley James Morrison Fellowship for Family-Based Financial Practice, providing annual support for community development professionals who demonstrate both institutional banking competence and commitment to elderly respect and family engagement in their advocacy work. The fellowship program ensures that future financial professionals understand the importance of intergenerational collaboration and family values in creating sustainable community impact and authentic financial literacy advocacy. Remember, institutional banking ownership and private wealth coordination aren't guaranteed family privileges. They're earned recognition of demonstrated character and elderly respect that creates foundation for financial credibility and authentic community contribution. Accommodation that disappeared from personal housing and became community service requirements taught Bradley and Sarah about the true meaning of private wealth administration and the critical importance of honoring the elderly wisdom that distinguished lasting financial responsibility to superficial lifestyle presentation and systematic family dismissal. The institutional banking empire that had operated invisibly throughout their comfortable assumptions became the visible foundation for their transformation into authentic community professionals who understood that true financial success comes from serving others while respecting the elderly relatives whose wisdom and expertise created opportunities for meaningful contribution rather than competitive business training and systematic generational dismissal that prioritized career management over authentic relationships and community values. Sometimes the most valuable lesson you can teach ungrateful family members is that financial privilege isn't automatic entitlement, it's earned recognition that continues only when families demonstrate appropriate respect for elderly wisdom and traditional values that create foundation for authentic community service and meaningful institutional banking administration. The private wealth coordination that had protected their comfortable lifestyle became the foundation for their transformation into community servants who understood that true success comes from serving others while honoring the elderly relatives whose lifetime of expertise and service created every opportunity for authentic contribution and family legacy development. The institutional banking funding that served systematic elderly dismissal became the heart of a community program coordinated financial education for hundreds, while teaching the most important lesson of all. Respect for elderly relatives isn't just family courtesy, it's the foundation for private wealth eligibility and authentic community contribution that distinguishes meaningful service from superficial career presentation and systematic dismissal of the generational wisdom that creates opportunities for lasting impact and authentic personal satisfaction in service to others. The business development center that Bradley created from my bedroom space now serves as a resource center for community financial supplies and elderly advocacy materials in their mystic, a daily reminder of how professional success without family respect leads to the most expensive lessons about character, community, and the true meaning of institutional banking ownership that extends far beyond private wealth portfolios and investment accounts to encompass the wisdom, relationships, and values that make a house into a true family legacy worthy of preservation and respect.